A very good evening and welcome to this edition of Behind the Headlines here at UBC. We're coming to you live from Kampala, and we are going to be looking today at the 2021 elections, the presidential elections, and what awaits the presidential candidates, what is going to happen in the election. The Electoral Commission yesterday wound up its nominations. We now can confirm that we have 11 candidates, and 5 of those are sponsored by their political parties. The rest 6 are independent candidates. One of the independent candidates is here, and 2 of those sponsored by their parties are also here. To discuss these issues, I have Honorable Retired Major General Mugisha Muntu Greg. He is here. Can you wave, General, wave to the viewers?
Good evening, dear viewers.
On his right is an independent. First of all, Major General Mugisha Muntu is standing on the ticket of Alliance for National Transformation, or ANT. That's probably the newest party in Uganda. We have Nancy Kalembe. She is a presidential candidate standing on independent ticket. Nancy, you're most welcome. I must say you are welcome back to UBC. You told me you earlier worked here.
Yes. As
a journalist.
I was a news anchor with the late Ballet Francis.
Good. It's good to see you. Next on the right of Nancy is Honorable Engineer Amuriat Oboy Patrick. He is, in short, known as POA. And he has added another title that probably you will be hearing on the campaign trail. He calls himself the Villager. You're most welcome, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Charles. Good evening, viewers. Thank you for bringing me to the show.
Thank you for
Today
coming.
I don't come shoeless. You know, I have my shoes on.
Now that Patrick is the one who has talked about it, I can make a fair comment about it. He is wearing both sides of the shoes. So don't think that he's shoeless in the studio. We don't allow in the studio a guest to be shoeless, but you're most welcome.
Well, we are going to have a shoeless revolution one day, I hope, you know, where Ugandans would protest, you know, against dictatorship.
Thank you so much. And in the studio, I have our economist. He tackles all the figure issues, all the political economy issues. Mr. Ramadan Gobi, he is a panelist on this show. He is a lecturer at Makerere University Business School, or a professor if you like. Mr. Gobi, you're most welcome back to this week.
Thank you, Charles.
How is the week going?
The week has been
starting very busy.
Quite busy.
I can imagine.
Quite hot, but we are doing well.
Hot when it is raining.
Thank you for bringing these aspiring presidents of Uganda.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.
And on the line, through Zoom, we will have Honorable Margaret Muhanga. Honorable Margaret, I must say, we sympathize with your family. You lost your nephew this week, and it's sad, but it's good for and befitting that you can still have time to engage with these aspiring candidates and people who are important to the democracy of this country at this time, and that you took off time amidst your bereavement. Thanks for coming to the show, and it's good to see you again, Margaret. Honorable Margaret, I can't pick you. Honorable Margaret, unmute your microphone. Try to unmute.
I have.
Okay.
I am sorry I had muted my microphone, but I am on now, right?
Yes.
Yes, I'm very happy to be on this show this evening. And I can tell you, Charles, I'm here to send a statement to Ugandans, most especially opposition politicians and a few Ugandans who have been careless with their lives about COVID. My nephew was a celebrated and very brilliant lawyer in Kampala. He got COVID. He did not show any signs of COVID. He had no cough. He had no flu. He had no high temperature. The only thing that my sister thought they should check for is when he lost like appetite and they decided to test for COVID. Remember, the first things we knew about COVID was Okweti Amura. He wasn't Okweti Amura. He wasn't having any cold. He didn't have any high temperature. But COVID had been eating up his lungs for 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh dear.
By the time they made the test, it was too late. So Ugandans, please be very, very careful. Observe the SOPs, do the social distancing. Please don't go to crowded places. COVID is real. It's not a government program to stop anybody from campaigning. It's not a government program to mint money. COVID is real.
Sorry about that, and we sympathize with your family, and we ask the Lord to give you the courage and the strength to endure this loss. But yeah, it is real, and we will be discussing part of that in this, because the election this time is really a COVID election, if you like. Let me start with let me start with the lady on the panel. Nancy, you have been duly nominated. You are now a candidate to vie for the highest seat in the land. What do you want to change? Just give us start us off by giving us some 3 most fundamental things that you want to change, apart from just the common asking that we must change the regime, we must change government.
Correction. I've not been talking about changing the regime and changing government.
Okay.
Because you can change government and still remain with the disease in the system. As some people have put it, that Uganda has unsupervised evil happening. Anyway, the 3 major things I would like to do something about, change. One is the health sector, because health touches everybody, and maternal health especially. I am a woman. I have gone through the process of production, to put it that way. And it is not an easy thing to bring life. Everybody is here because one woman was kind enough not to abort you. However, these women who are bringing life have not been treated well. They still give birth on the floors, and there is very bad health care for them, both post and prenatal, and that needs to change drastically. But besides the maternal health, we need to seriously consider the general health sector and look specifically at the employees of this sector, the doctors, nurses, and everybody involved in there, the pharmacists and all. But most especially, I'll talk about the doctors and nurses who have to be on the floors day in and day out trying to save our lives. What is their welfare like? In some countries, there are compounds for medical practitioners, especially those in government hospitals. Their remuneration is not adequate, and yet they sacrifice their lives, expose themselves to sometimes very deadly diseases. So the least we can do as a government is make sure that their welfare is satisfactory. Secondly, the education system. I've always said, I went through it, many of us have gone through it. However, it needs an overhaul. Not changing, not tweaking, not editing, but an overhaul. Because it is outdated. It was not tailor-made for us. It was brought here by our colonial masters.
Are you talking about the entire curriculum?
The entire education system needs to be overhauled. I'm not talking about curriculum only. I'm talking about the curriculum of the students and of the teachers who are going to. We need to put some value in the education sector. For example, when we're talking about teachers, when I was in school, in S6, we started to make choices for our university. And almost the entire class puts education as their fourth choice. And it already is devalued in the minds of the students who are going there. So if I fail everything else, I'll go to education. So it means it's not held as a vocation. Most people are not in it because they love to. And even those who would want to go there because they love it, the remuneration is so bad. Teachers are not respected. It is said that if you want to destroy a society, devalue the teacher and the mother. So that if society thinks that motherhood is a second-class job, that means no mother will remain home to raise great generations to come. If you devalue the teacher, it means if the teachers don't have confidence in themselves, they're badly remunerated, they're treated like they are fourth class in this case, because a lot of times it comes as fourth choice. That means what value are you putting in our education system? If the people who have failed to get everything else are the ones that are teaching your children and you're expecting to have quality students, then that's a bit of a tall order, I would think. The third thing is the economy. I have spoken a lot about what can be done. We're talking about poverty levels soaring and youth unemployment. And yet, when you look at this age group, first and foremost, I studied Bachelor of Science in Population Studies and I majored in Actuarial Science. So when you're looking at populations and statistics, the youth make up over 78% of our population currently. And if you're talking about productivity and economy, these are the people who actually contribute the most to our economy because they're in their most productive years. If they're ignored for too long, our economy will crash.
Okay. First hold it there. I want us to first pick the lineup of what you intend to do, and then we will come back to the details, because that's going to be the crux of our discussion.
So basically that is it. The health sector,
so the health, education, and the economy. And education, you want an entire overhaul.
Yes.
General Mugisha Muntu, what do you aim at changing, apart from if you became a president, if you were elected a president come 14th of January 2021?
Basically, as the Alliance for National Transformation, we seek to create an environment in this country where all our citizens can pursue and be able to achieve a state of happiness for themselves and their families. That's really a nucleus or a summary of what we'd want to see the end state of whatever we do. There's no human being on this planet who doesn't do all things that they do in search of happiness. Whoever they are. Therefore, you must put into place conditions, one, to ensure that they are healthy, they are educated, they are well trained. And there are conditions that enable them in whatever area of endeavor they are to fulfill their dreams. The one who is in agriculture ensure that you invest in agriculture. I think we're operating at, in terms of budgetary allocations, I don't think we've gone above 3% yet.
I think it's about 3.3, either 3.3 or 2.8. 3.8.
3.8. Yeah. That means we haven't gone above 4% yet. Uganda is signatory to the Maputo Declaration, where I think it was required that government should invest up to 10% of their budgetary allocations. Uganda, I think, I don't have the exact figure, but I think around 70% of our population is still in agriculture. Most of those are in subsistence farming. There needs to be focus in the agriculture area, naturally, where you have got the biggest percentage of the population. Number of things need to be done. You have to invest in irrigation, invest in areas where there are good extension services. Different areas have got different, I think they have done some zoning to see which crops can be grown where. You have to ensure that you keep on investing in areas of quality seeds. Ensure that there is agricultural mechanization. Work on the cooperative movements, resuscitate them, because most of the small scale growers really on their own may not be able to make things happen unless you create conditions in which cooperatives can be resuscitated around the crops activities that they engage in. Work on the marketing systems. Work on the research and development areas that deal with different things, whether it's in animal husbandry, whether it's in crop husbandry. Put in place conditions for those who want to invest into agro-processing, so that those who are producing whatever they produce can end up having markets in the agro-processing or adding value to whatever they grow. As we speak, a lot of lip service has been put in the area of agriculture, but I don't think much really has been done. Most of the people involved in agriculture are surviving on their own. If an area is attacked, like those who are, for example, growing bananas or growing coffee, if it's attacked by a disease, you don't find effectiveness in terms of the extension services in detecting what kind of disease it is, to go into research to know what kind of responses there can be. People who are on their own really in that respect cannot protect themselves.
But sorry to interrupt you there, General. Sorry to interrupt you a little.
Yes.
As a follow-up,
yes,
this is a campaign going on.
Yes.
And in a campaign, you have to, sometimes you are challenged by your opponent,
yes,
probably who has a similar plan,
yes,
or who has a rhyming plan.
Yes.
If the current government campaigned and said, so General Muntu has nothing new in terms of agriculture, because in terms of seeds research, NARO is doing something, the National Agricultural Research Organization. If Museveni said that if in terms of what else did you say? You talked about agriculture extension services. If they talked about Operation Wealth Creation, that this is trying to reach the people and that their extension services through NADS and all that, what would be your follow-up response to that?
But do they function? That's the question.
So how different would you want to be?
By the time you move the army to go and do agriculture extension work, it means that you have failed. And you are taking the army, officers who are trained in warfare, and you are taking them to become agriculture extension workers. Anybody should know that that really is an expression of or admission of failure, that you have failed to build extension services that ordinarily would be staffed by people who've been trained specifically in responding to the challenges in the area of agriculture? Two,
in the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, I also gather they have up to about 4,000 extension workers, of whom they have trained, I think, about 3,800 in reaching out to the people to teach them some of these farming methods. What would you say to that?
The only areas maybe where I find some work which is being done is those who are private sector led and some of the NGOs. I think really if there was honesty on the side of the regime, they would say, I think, admit failure in the area of agriculture. 34 years and you are still operating below 4% in an area where there is 70% of the population. Look at the area of agriculture and people who are engaged into it. How on earth can you let people who are involved in farming only access finance through commercial banks? How can a farmer survive when they have borrowed money so expensive through the commercial banking sector? 34 years and you've not established an agricultural bank, and the cooperative bank, which was there for some time, it had its own weaknesses, and you let it die out, you don't resuscitate it and refinance it. There's a clear failure in that regard. So of course you also have to invest in infrastructure, you've got to invest into education and health, because you need to have a healthy population. Also the education sector definitely, because I think at the core of any development process is the human being. And the human being, to be effective, they need to be educated. I have seen countries like Japan. What natural resources did Japan have? They didn't have, I mean, besides forests and fishing, they didn't have anything else. But the human factor is at the core of the development process of Japan. Okay. Therefore, you must invest in education. Okay. Education also to create confidence. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have in our educational system. It's amazing that you can have people who've been educated from 1962 until now, and you find the people who lack confidence, who do not seem to realize that we all, as a people, all races, are created equal, you know, by God, with inherent capabilities to literally do whatever anybody else has done elsewhere. So in the conditions that you create, and also the educational system that you must resuscitate and have quality education that creates confidence in people, for them to realize that with other conditions put in place, and in that case we have got to talk about issues of democracy, issues of transparency, issues of equality before the law, issues of justice. Because an environment which is created where people feel confident and they know that they can pursue whatever capabilities they have, that's what sparks off what makes human beings excel in whatever they do.
Okay.
They'll become innovative, they'll be creative because of the environment that has been put in place. The supportive environment, but also the environment where the people feel that, you know what, there's nothing which an American has done, a Chinese has done, an Indian has done that I cannot do.
Okay, good.
Those are some of the things, besides, of course, creating conditions in which the private sector flourishes, because that's where you have job creation. Okay. Government is simply an employer, but the smallest in terms of how many people can be employed in government. Even if the population increases, I don't think we are going to go beyond 500,000 or 1 million people. And within 25 years, we are going to grow from 45 million to 100 million people. Therefore, we must put in place the necessary conditions for the private sector to flourish, grow, and therefore keep on expanding jobs.
Okay, good, General. Coming to power, line up for us the three most fundamental things that you would begin with if you were voted to the presidency on January the 14th, 2021. Those three that you would begin with that are most fundamental to you. or to FDC.
I think is important.
I know.
And what you are now saying to us is you want us to unveil the FDC manifesto here. I am not about to do that. No, I am not. But that said, I think viewers may want to know that the FDC is a center-right party. Being center-right, we believe in fairness. We believe in equal opportunities. That a son of a peasant coming from Zombo can go to school with the daughter of a petty bourgeoisie and still excel based on their natural abilities that can then be harnessed for the benefit of the country. That said, I think I'm going to talk in broad terms, and I will address my mind to what you want, 3 key issues. A population that is not educated is economically a dead population. Sterile, cannot do much in terms of development, and is often a liability to the government at the time that they live. And so the FDC is going to emphasize on getting the population educated, skilled, and tooled. Because education by itself could turn people into paper tigers, full of knowledge that is not put into practice. And so the FDC is going to exercise a policy shift in education, looking at the failures of the NRM today. Take, for example, funding of our education. The NRM has got it absolutely upside down. It's unbelievable that they cannot, even for a moment, see that there's something wrong with the way education is funded. I am an educationist. And we're going to use expertise coming from us and from other people, our members, to speak to our policy. And one area that we are going to look at is the area of how public funds are given to the education sector. Now take, for example, today the government of NRM, Seven's government, would choose to put money at the lower levels.
UPE?
UPE, a little bit of USC, where the load is very small. Something that could be managed by even a peasant.
But where numeracy is high.
And making, people vulnerable at the higher levels. That you will have free education, Bonaba Sombe, in primary, every child comes in. Don't mind that, they copied our policy. When the NRM first conceived this idea of UPE, they said we are going to have just 4 kids going to school per family. Dr. Kiza Besigye, then our flag bearer, took our manifesto and showed it to Ugandans and said, why do you discriminate against other children?
Which year was that?
I think this could have been
UPE started in
2011.
I think UPE started in 1996. The president first promised it in the election of 1996.
I think then it would have been, in 2001 elections when we were still Reform Agenda. Now, you manage education and the kids end up in P7 or Senior 4.
But let me first make a follow-up to that. Just a challenge a bit, and I want you to to give our viewer a clarification on that. I remember when President Museveni first made that promise, he said that children, especially of the rural poor, were not accessing basic education, which is UPE, and that his government, that was 1996, would start with ensuring that access to that basic education is achieved, and then the issue of quality would follow. So where do you fault UPE in that state?
Well, now it's donkey years. What kind of graduates are we experiencing coming out of UPE? Children who cannot read and write. Does that indicate that after this many years there has been a refinement of the processes that lead to learning? So
what would you want to change? Do you want to put in more money, or you want...
There's a lot of things
or
that
like
need to
Nancy,
be done.
you want to overhaul the entire...
There is a lot of things that need to be put in place to ensure proper learning. The teacher, who is the transmitter of knowledge, what are their living conditions? You can't expect a teacher to ride 10 kilometers to school and 10 kilometers back home during the rainy season and expect that teacher to perform. You are just deceiving yourself and deceiving the population.
Okay.
So the FDC is going to improve on the terms of service
of teachers. Okay.
We are also going to be deliberate about physical infrastructure to create a conducive environment for learning. Today you see children sitting under grass-thatched roofs, sitting on logs for benches or desks, sitting, watching a hungry teacher who can't even provide for his own children, her own children. We are going to introduce schemes that would enable parents and scholar students to attain higher education through scholarships and loans. The loan scheme today doesn't reach far. It's really something that is cosmetic in nature, not meant to help. And so the peasant in Kabong, wanting to send their children to Makerere University Business School, where my good professor, lectures, is going to have to sell every little asset that they own, including even the most treasured item, land, to get their children to university. So that responsibility has been shifted to the family, to the parent. Now, and the calamity about this and poor planning on the part of the current government is that this young person whose family assets have been sold completely goes back to the village in Kabong and has no job. And why? Because of poor commerce and trade policies. Now, let me labor to talk about this. I could spend the whole night talking to you about what we have in store. Look at a typical business in this country today. Somebody is coming from China or from India. They are coming here to market a product that they produce, the manufacturer. They are the manufacturer. They are going to be the wholesaler. They will be the retailer in a little shop in the village. They will even be the distributor. What is left for the local businessman? Tomorrow they are going to bring their sister from India, from China, to do even petty jobs within the business.
But in a free market environment.
Local entrepreneurs.
Honorable Amule.
Let me just finish my point.
No, I'm just touching on that because because for me, I ask these questions for my viewer out there, and I don't want them to go out minus understanding your point. It is also a platform for the three of you to ensure that you make your point with clarity. Now, especially part of what you plan to launch as a manifesto, whatever you talk about, make sure it has some clarity. So on that part, Uganda is currently running a free market environment as we know it. How are you going to go to Chikubo and dictate that a businessman Gobi should not deal in this and should deal in this when you have said as a country, or are you also planning to overhaul the economic system in Uganda, and through what?
Well, you see, sometimes I have a problem with the structural adjustments of the World Bank.
Okay.
If you're a manufacturer and you want to go and compete with a retailer, you are driving many people out of business.
True.
I think there has got to be fragmentation. Stay where you are. Do the manufacturing of the product. Market it. Put all the billboards in town to show what you are selling. And let a wholesaler take it from there. The wholesaler does his wholesaling, her wholesaling, to the retailer. You see, what you are describing is actually driving people out of employment and enriching the wholesale, the manufacturer, not distributing what would ultimately be the profit.
Okay.
Through those levels.
Okay. The third one. That was your second point.
May I talk something about our sick health system? And I'm going to say what exactly is happening today in our country. People like you, who have got connections in government, when you suffer from common sicknesses, you are flown to Germany, you are flown to India, South Africa, to America, to UK.
I'm so lucky then.
And you know who pays for it?
He was in the UK for flu.
He was in the UK for flu. I don't know whether it was bad flu.
That's a good one.
Who pays for this? It is the common man who soils and toils, the whole day in their fields and nothing. Now, that imbalance should surely change.
Okay.
Because these people here who are connected and in government spend the taxpayers' money to go out. Our health system has nearly collapsed. The other day, as I was prospecting to become a candidate, a flag bearer of the FDC, I went to Mulago, refurbished, very beautiful buildings.
The new.
Yes, and you find that
the women hospital.
Yes, they call it specialized women hospital. Who goes in there? My auntie who gets pregnant from Kanyum cannot go there, because
why not?
For you to go there, you go to pay. And no, for that peasant in the village, you are going to pay through your nose.
Okay.
So I think that the FDC, in a nutshell, is going to emphasize on preventive more than curative approach to our health.
Good point. Gobi, I need to bring you at that point. As you realize, the candidates have outlined major themes that cut across. Health, education, the environment must be conducive, the economy, writing the economy. And
that as well, for especially young people.
And do you think that the explanation they give, short as it may be for now, that is what can turn around this country, and that you can, as a voter, you go be as a voter based on what they are rolling out, that you can say, yes, this is a perfect replacement for the man who is there already, the old man.
Yes, thank you very much. I think I'm delighted with the submissions of the honorable members on the panel today, because quite often in Uganda, when we listen to politicians, they have been more inclined to advancing the political messages, especially concerning the political space they do have. I thought actually when you asked them to mention the 3 things they are going to be focusing on, I thought they were going to go into that direction of the politics. But they have come out clearly to talk about the issues that affect the average person in Uganda. And I would say that actually that is almost the complete list, which you can summarize, in development economics. We usually say that, and I think it was General Mut who talked of happiness. We pursue happiness. One man actually said that we should stop even computing GDP or GNP, the gross national product, and go for gross national happiness. And in that happiness we are talking about, there are 3 key things which development economists say countries must put in place if they want to transform. The first one is freedom of choice, the freedom to choose. To choose what? Everything. And when you talk of health care system, when you talk of education system, when you talk of the meals people have, or the housing and so on, are these things provided in an environment where people are free to choose them? And that freedom is not only for the choice of material things, but even immaterial things. The second one is self-esteem. The self-esteem is about who you are, how people feel they are as Ugandans. Do they feel self-actualized? Do they feel they are being left out of the system, and so on? And the third, and the most important of the 3, according to development economists, is the income. Money, some people say money is not everything. Economists don't believe that. Economists, we believe that money is actually everything. And if you want to understand that money is everything, you try not to have it. And therefore, you'll find that when I heard from the aspiring candidates for president emphasizing the issues from the need to overturn and try to reform our agricultural system using a value chain approach to ensuring that human development, human capital development is emphasized, health and education, to issues of jobs and wealth creation. I'm so relieved and that Uganda is actually, Charles, advancing very well. And these are the kind of conversations we should be having as a country, because as we have discussed on this panel severally, and I've told you, that democracy works only when the economy is working. When the economy is transformed, poor countries don't sustain democracy, because it becomes so easy for whoever wants to manipulate the democracy to do so. People stop to vote for interests, and they are voting for, just a few things like food and kilos of sugar and a T-shirt, Someone, I see people fighting for T-shirts. And they put it on until it is in rag, rag form. So if we want to sustain democracy, first of all, to build and sustain it in Uganda, beyond at the periods we, at one time I shared them, maybe for the benefit of our presidential candidates. Researchers found that there is no country which has sustained democracy beyond 12 years when its per capita income is below $1,000. The longest you can sustain democracy in a poor country of less than $1,000 per capita is 12 years. And if you are up to around $3,000 below, you will sustain it for 27 years. If you are $60,000 and below, you sustain it for about 60 years. And beyond $60,000, you sustain it forever. There is no country which has lost, which has failed or has had collapsed democracy when it is above $6,000. So I think the issues, $60,000, just $60,000. So when I look at what the several candidates are talking about, this is going to be a good campaign of livelihoods, of the transformation of the economy, and as an economist, I'm really very, very, very glad. What actually POA is talking about in terms of having investors who are doing everything is what in economics we call anti-trust laws. Uganda does not have competition law. The law which defines what economic agents must engage in and up to what limit. We don't have a competition law, and some of us as economists we have been talking about it. The good thing is now in the NRM manifesto, it is something which they are promising they are going to be doing. The same with the local content. To put in place, yes, and enforce. Because, you know, in Uganda we had this thing of liberalization. We took liberalization literally to mean that government had no business at all with business, in doing business. And with that, also we took it literally to mean that government's role was just to provide the environment in which they call, you know, security and infrastructure, and after that, then the private sector will be able to flourish unabated. And also, when we were asked to open up, as I usually say, we plucked out the door. You know, if somebody opened your house, and for you pluck out the door and you throw it away. Those have been our challenges. And we are now trying to reverse those things. But I also wanted to remind POA that when it comes to what should foreign direct investors invest in and what should Uganda invest in, those ones are defined in our investment code. We have the investment code, which was written in 1991, and recently it was amended. We have a new code of 2019, and in that investment code there are 22 sectors which are defined for foreign investors where they should invest. Beyond them, they are not allowed. For example, a foreign direct investor is not allowed to do smallholder farming. That's something for Ugandans. It's not allowed to hawk things, retail things in a kiosk. Now, you may say, but we see some Chinese doing that, and Indians. That's a weakness of enforcement of the law. And for that, he would be spot on to say that as far as the enforcement is concerned, there is weakness. Lastly, he talked of the sick health system. And you know, I like the choice of his words. We go to the health centers to get treated, but he's indicating that actually our health centers themselves are sick. And he is saying that as a result of this, most of our leaders seek health care from outside. You know, God maybe saw this and intervened. He brought COVID. There is nobody now anymore who's going out. So for that, don't worry. But also, I want to really encourage POA to look at the facts. The health indicators of Uganda have improved. And I would want all candidates really to talk, even I think Nancy who talked about maternal health and other things. I think the journey we've walked as far as health care is concerned is a good journey. When I look at the numbers where we have come from life expectancy to infant mortality to maternal health to even antenatal and postnatal care you were talking about, the numbers, the curves are quite good. Those which are supposed to go up, they are going up. Those who are supposed to come down, they are coming down. I think one area actually where this government has performed, in my view, is getting Ugandans not to die. Ugandans are no longer dying. That's why the population has grown very fast. The children were immunized. And also the Ugandans are living quite longer lives. Because now the average life expectancy is 63 years. About 2 decades ago, it was 48 years. I want to tell you there are few countries around the world that have added those years on the life expectancy of people. Maybe we started from a very low base, but the truth is those numbers speak for themselves.
Okay, well,
I need to... Ugandans are paying for that. And paying through the nose.
Margaret is watching you online, and she is also a politician, though at a lower level than yours. I need to bring her in, and Honorable Margaret, from what you have heard, especially the 3 candidates for the highest office projecting and planning to do, of course they are going to verse your candidate, and you would not want them to, ordinarily you would not want them to succeed or their plans to be understood well, in my view. But for the purpose of this discussion, what are they getting right? What is it that you as NRM have in your plan which is better than what they are planning?
Thank you, Charles. Actually, Charles, what I would start with is the saying that spectators are the best players. When somebody is not the one in the wheels, they always think they can drive better. Because from the presidential candidates, I can see they're really following in the steps of what His Excellency the President presented in Munyunyu. And I'm glad that Dr. Gobi was part of the formulation of this manifesto as an economist. So his rich experience in the economies of Uganda, the economics of Uganda, has already brought a perspective of where Uganda was, where it is now, and the future that the president wants to secure. That less Ugandans are dying, hence the population increase, which I actually call explosion of numbers, because we're increasing at a very fast rate vis-a-vis our resources, and so it's a little something critical that we need to handle, or maybe to take it slow. And why I said spectators are the best players, one of the things Paul was raising, Patrick Amuriat, is what exactly the NRM has already handled. You know that beginning of this year, the education system was totally changed. From secondary level, it was actually overhauled. A child will now study from S1 to S4, get an O-level certificate, which can let this child get employed. It will make them employable, because it's no longer the cram work of class. It is skills-based education. And remember, both the NRM and the opposition fought this change of the education system by bringing lame excuses, some to play to the gallery, others seriously thinking that the teachers were not yet prepared to take the students through this course. But I happened to go to schools immediately they opened, and I visited a few schools to ask students what they were learning, and what they think the future will be. Just the first term alone, we had not even gone 3/4 of the first term, but they were already learning a lot of skills. They were learning a lot of knitting, crafts, things that they will get out of schools and work with in their daily lives. Remember our time, we would learn about Christopher Columbus, here the Canadian prairies, we would learn about the river rain, which were totally irrelevant to our life and our lifestyle and our future. Right now, students are being taught what is relevant, and they are being given skills such that even after the ordinary level certificate, somebody is employable. After A-level, somebody is employable. The certificate will show the skills that this student has acquired. The other issue that all of them are raising is agriculture. General Mugisha Muntu raised it, forgetting that what is actually raising is what is being implemented at the moment. But maybe he wants to add. But what is being implemented is that the narrow National Agriculture Research
Honorable Margaret.
Organization, sorry, yes please.
General Mugisha Muntu is saying yes, the way that those systems or structures are there, but how are you implementing it? So
I agree with him entirely that picking these soldiers from nowhere and making them the implementing authority could have had some mistakes here and there. But you see now, it's because the belief now in Uganda is that it is only the UPDF who can deliver. I see here they have built a playground, a stadium actually in Fort. They are facing off the King's Palace, and they deliver on time. But normally what I have seen is that also they do not just handpick these UPDF officers. They are officers who are actually trained agriculturalists. Did you know that Katumba Wamala, our former CDF and now Minister of Agriculture, had a diploma in agriculture, and that was his first qualification?
Minister of Works. So
if he had remained a serving soldier in the army at a lower rank and is being posted to a district, people would criticize that. These soldiers, some of them are professionals. I have a son who is an engineer in the UPDF, and he works in the engineering department. I have a friend who is a doctor working with the UPDF. I know so many lawyers in the UPDF. So not all UPDF are just soldiers. There are many soldiers with different fields of study. And so we need to know which soldiers were posted where. And actually, well, first of all, their work was to distribute. They are not extension workers. They are not teaching anybody how to handle agricultural issues. All they had to do is to deliver on time the seedlings for the farmers to plant during the correct season. Because it was envisaged that the NADS people were getting late. They were delivering seeds or seedlings at the time when the season is ending or when it's already over. So that's to answer General Muntu's worries or queries. So now, this skills-based education, what I think it is meant to do is to get so many of our youth out of unemployment. Because if you finish S4 and you can run a sewing machine, that means you can sit as a group, have your sewing machines, take business. Take, for example, which people do business in Uganda. It is a small cream of people that have taken over every business. Somebody owns these supplies, he supplies uniforms, he supplies food to the system, and you find it's the same people earning this money. Once our people get out of school with skills, they are going to compete with these other people who have been making money for themselves. And the same group of people making this money. And then one of the other things we need to
finally
remember is that fighting foreigners from doing casual labor is fighting ourselves. How many Ugandans do casual labor in the US? London alone has 100,000 Ugandans employed and working. They are Indians or Asians, Ugandans of Asian origin who do business in Uganda. I have grown up with Asians here in Fort Portal who are doing business. You cannot ask them to leave or to stop doing business. They didn't come here as investors. But the perception of Ugandans is that every foreigner who has come here to do business has just flown from the moon, or they came from other countries. They are Asians who were born here. They are white people who were born here. And they have lived here all their years. And they haven't come here as investors. We need to differentiate these people.
Honorable Margaret, those ones are Ugandans, and I don't think any of these candidates are referring to those ones. Or are they?
I really don't think there's anybody who comes from abroad to hawk around. I do not think so. Because in order for you to do local business, you really must know the local languages. And somebody who has come from India to work in a factory or something may not necessarily know our local languages. For them to hawk, to go to people's homes and sell stuff, they won't be able to speak Luganda or even Kiswahili.
Okay, Honorable.
And so I believe that these people have not been the investors that we think. But it is a political gimmick that a lot of people use to show that foreigners are more favored in Uganda. The other thing I want to raise before you go to another panelist is the investments in Uganda. If you look at the investment authority guidelines, a foreigner to get a tax waiver in Uganda has got to invest, I think, $10 million. While a Ugandan, it's only $1 million. So Ugandans are favored in most of the cases.
Okay, thank you. I need to call for a quick break. We are now going into proper discussions back and forth on all the issues that have been raised. But we need to take this break right now, and then when we come back, I'll get back to the candidates to look into some of these issues, touch here and there the clarifications, and add more meat to the issues raised, as well as the real environment, how they plan to cover, the 146 districts of this country in about 63 days, which is the duration for the campaigns. Let's take that break right now.
COVID-19 is a COVID-19 is a disease caused by the new coronavirus. Know the symptoms. They include fever, coughing, muscle pain, shortness of breath. What can you do? Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds or use an alcohol-based hand rub. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth with a tissue or flexed elbow. Discard tissues into a closed bin and then wash your hands. Maintain a distance of at least 1 meter between yourself and someone who is ill. Seek medical help if you display symptoms. Wear a mask if you are coughing or sneezing, or if you are caring for someone who is sick. Dispose of your masks into a closed bin and then wash your hands. Check trusted sources regularly for accurate information. Remember, the best prevention is to keep yourself healthy and follow these safe steps.
Children are a special gift, one we must protect and nurture with care. Ensuring your child has a birth certificate opens doors for them that would otherwise be hard to access, such as immunization, school admission, or simply proving their age and belonging. Let us do our duty as parents and guardians by registering our children and getting them birth certificates. For more information, visit the NERA office closest to you or call the toll-free number 0800-211-700. This message is brought to you by NERA.
We're coming back on air. Welcome back from that break. This is Behind the Headlines. My name is Charles Odongso, your host. With me in the studio, three presidential candidates. We have General Retired Mugisha Muntu Greg. We have Nancy Kalembe. He's independent. General Muntu is standing on Alliance for National Transformation. And we have Engineer Patrick Amuria Toboy, who is standing on the FDC ticket. We started with, and of course we have on the line through Zoom, all the way from Fort Portal, we have Honorable Margaret Muhanga. And in the studio, also panelist, we have Mr. Gobi Ramadan, who is an economics lecturer at Makerere University Business School. Before we went into the break, we wanted to touch on the main points that these presidential candidates are going to be traversing the country, passing the message. They have, the Electoral Commission has now today, announced officially that the presidential voting or elections will take place together with the parliamentary elections on the 14th of January 2021. That's next year. And the campaigns will run from the 9th. That's when these candidates will start. So I need to do a bit of civic education there. The campaigns will run from the 9th officially, 9th of this month, which is that Monday? Starting Monday, up to the 12th of January. Really, in effect, saying 63 days for the candidates to traverse Uganda. So let me share with you one or two statistics that the candidates need to know. We have right now 146 districts in Uganda. In the last election, there were 112. We now have 57,582 villages. 68. 68,733. 57,000 were for 2016. The number of voters who will participate in this election, or who have registered to participate, are 17.7 million voters. The number of polling stations this year, we have 34,344, up from 28,010. Now, these candidates have to cover the breadth of the 146 districts in the 63 days. I don't know who to start with. General, I should start with you since you're on the extreme end. How do you plan to cover this? What do you plan to, how do you plan to manage the difficulty, or the challenge rather, that you are going into for this election?
Before I go into that, I'd like to make a comment on what we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
You know, when you are moving on a 1,000-kilometer journey and you've moved 100 kilometers, that's progress.
Yes.
Now, the biggest discomfort I have is the measure of success that we seem to be judging ourselves against here mostly. And I think because when a regime remains in power for a long time, it tends to influence the thinking in a country. That makes us quite uncomfortable in the Alliance for National Transformation. Because, you know, now when we are judging the performance of the sitting regime, we judge it according to where we were. In 86, we were in quite a bad state. I agree with you with people I know what was happening here. And therefore, when you see where we were then and where we are at, definitely you will know that there is registered progress. But our measure of success, we think, and if it's the will of God and we take power, we will reverse the mindset of the people in the country. So that not only are we measured that way, but subsequently those who follow us. Because even forget about NRM, because it's only been there for 34 years. Look at the time from independence, 62 until now, 58 years. In the 60s, 62, 63, 64, per capita income was around $300 of Uganda. Were around 5 million by that time, 5 maybe or 7 million. And the other countries in the region, Tanzania, Kenya, also around 300. Now, we have to compare ourselves with the other countries which are also more or less at the same level. This is something which almost everybody who can read knows now. That there are countries like Singapore, like Malaysia, like South Korea, which are also more or less at the same level in terms of per capita income. In the same span of time, 50-something years, where is Malaysia? 9,000 plus United States dollars.
Per capita.
Per capita income. Where is South Korea? The last time the figure I saw was around 22,000, maybe 24,000 now, 24,000 United States dollars. Singapore is much, much higher. I think it's about 45,000 United States dollars. Possibly now 50-something. Where are we? We're around 800. 800. Yeah. So we've moved about 2.5 times. The other countries, like South Korea, has moved more than 100 times. So if we are looking at where we should have been, we wouldn't be celebrating anything. We would be agitated and asking ourselves, how on earth can we not be? Whatever challenges there could have been on a journey of 1,000 kilometers, why should we not be at 800, 900 kilometers? Why should we be at 100 kilometers when we should have been at 1,000 kilometers? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Because if we measure ourselves to where we were, it will make us feel lazy. And the biggest problem on this continent is laziness of thinking. Africa is not just Uganda. We are trapped in poverty. We are trapped in a state of which should be unacceptable. But we settle for little because of our mindset. You can imagine we are measuring ourselves where we are at now from where we came from. But if we measure ourselves to where we should have been, this regime should have been out yesterday. Because you can trace why we are where we are now. In corruption, in indiscipline, in lack of management, skills, to build a meritocracy, for example, in terms of the public service, that can bring efficiency in service delivery. So if you don't tackle those weaknesses, we can spend another 30 years and we'll have moved maybe from 800 to 1,500 United States dollars per capita. And then that group will also celebrate. There needs to be a shift in our mindsets. And now to go to what you asked. There is a problem. We met with the Electoral Commission. We communicated to them. We said, pull the electoral process forward so there can be adequate days for those who are going to go on campaigns. As early as I think that was
August?
Maybe July or August. But of course they did what they did, and we have ended up with 60 days. Imagine the presidential candidates to move in 145 districts in 60 days. It's tough, but we'll have to do it because we can't do, we can't do anything. We'll have to move day and night then also utilize the other channels, media, TV, radio stations, and social media.
Okay.
So we'll have to apply different strategies. I believe the different countries, the different organizations have different strategies to apply, because we want to reach as many as we can of the 17 million voters.
Okay.
Because we want voters to make informed choices. We are talking about issues of life and death here. We keep talking to the different people we go to meet. 25 years may seem long. It's tomorrow. I mean, those of us who took power, these 35 years ago, it's just like yesterday. 25 years down the road, we're going to be 100 million people. Now, to deliver services to 100 million people, to feed them, have good education, to cater for the many young people that would have to access education, health services, 100 million people, water provision, power, urban and city development to accommodate the increasing numbers. You're going to have increased rural-urban migration. To ensure we have jams now here in Kampala. Sometimes you can spend 2-3 hours when we have got 3.5 million people, daytime. By the time we hit 100 million people, a city like Kampala could have grown to 7, 8, 9. Now, to build the infrastructure to contain 7, 8 million people, you have to have started yesterday. We didn't. So any group which gets in must be disciplined enough, focused enough, knows what it's going to be doing to ensure that they plan for all that. And you give 60 days. They've been seeing General Museveni on TV trapped for 4 months talking about COVID. And you know the human mind can easily be misled because they keep looking, the visuals have an impact on the human mind. So we have to have enough time to penetrate their thinking, their minds, erase that picture, and plant a new picture of what needs to be done in 60 days. It's tough, but it's an issue of life or death. So there is nothing that we will not be able to do that is humanly possible, that we will not do. And we hope that the Ugandan people who understand what we are talking about will also corroborate or coordinate effort to help us, those whom you believe that are good agents of change, for us to pull off that. Because to spend another 5 years being run as a country with a government with these levels of gross irresponsibility, the way they manage the economy, the way they manage the services, the corruption, the indiscipline, we will be eating that 25 million. I mean 25 years. And the population is growing. So we would be contributing to a crisis that certainly we will face if there are no effective interventions that should have started yesterday. But the last elections, the people still didn't understand what they are dealing with, made errors then that they shouldn't repeat now.
Nancy, how do you plan to handle the difficulties? I know General Muntu has touched on it very passionately, but someone could even argue that incumbency across the world, everywhere, benefits the incumbent. We are just seeing Trump with Biden in battling in the US, and Trump has been campaigning, moving with all the facilities of an incumbent president. He remains one unless we change the rules. So how do you plan to efficiently and effectively campaign, and campaign reaching my grandmother, my whoever in Nebi, in Zombo, in Kisoro, somewhere?
Please allow me to borrow a leaf from
From general.
From general. And allow me to also discuss something about what we were discussing before we went into the break.
Responding to that. It's okay.
Honorable spoke about the overhaul of the education system that has been done. And she mentioned that by the time someone leaves S4, they'll be able to be employable. I beg to disagree with this being seen as progress, because by the time we left P7, that was 1994, I was employable by the time I left P7. Why? Because we had schools in skills-based training in primary school. By the time we left P7, we could do dindo work, which means we could sew clothes. We could bake. We could do woodwork. We could do basic art and crafts like mats and baskets and all that. You could basically earn a living. We did agriculture. So that is not something we should clap about, because it was there when I was in P7. I am 40 years old, and we cannot be celebrating things that we were celebrating which were not even celebrated when I was in P7. You were expected to know these things. The only thing was you were not allowed to work because you were not yet maybe 17 or 18 years old. And by the time we were in S4, some of us were making, a living from either baking and distribution. Our education system should go away from the very basic development that we thought we had in the 80s and the 90s. This is 2020. Our education system, while other countries are talking about technologies, hovering cars and all that, they're exploring space. We're still talking about skills-based training in this day and age. Our agriculture is, I visited Israel, I think, last year but one. And I was looking at the agriculture. I talked to a friend of mine, and we were discussing about their fishing ponds and all. And he said, "You come from Uganda?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Why on earth do you want this technology? God has given it to you for free. If you put me anywhere near Lake Victoria, life would be very different from what we have here. We are struggling." Our challenge is not that we are poor or anything as a people. I think there's been put controls and measures in place. I wish government would emphasize the policies that look very good on paper and put them into practice, as much as they have emphasized protecting the wealth of this country for a certain group of people. It's almost difficult to break a certain ceiling of financial liberty in this country without being hovered over by the government. You understand what I mean?
Not quite.
Previously, General was talking about agriculture and banks.
Yeah. Agriculture financing.
Agriculture financing. A few years ago, Bank of Uganda had made financing available for agriculturalists of different levels. The challenge was they involved commercial banks who didn't care that the money was not even theirs in the first place. And they put ridiculous conditions for anybody to get that money. So they encouraged a lot of people to come in for that money. And the time period from the time you applied for that loan and the time you got it was not less than 3 months. We are in a country where we depend on the weather. And if you're going to go into irrigation, it's a very expensive venture that is almost unnecessary if you're prepared well. We're one of the very few countries in the world that has 2 rainy seasons. And maybe irrigation in some parts is not even necessary. It's just that we have failed to manage certain things well. She said that if you're a spectator, it's easy for you to claim that you're the best player. How can I come and join to play a game to demonstrate how good I am when everything is being put in place to ensure that I stay on the bench? Because that is what is happening. Look at the elections. You asked how we are getting prepared for these elections. Now, normally election period takes 120 days. And this time the days have been cut short. And the platform is slowly being tilted every day. When we started this whole election period, the platform started tilting. First, by dates being shifted. So it was very difficult to plan how you wanted to do anything because dates kept on shifting, and the reasons were COVID. Well, we understand COVID is in the country, but are we not even allowed to do certain things even when COVID is within the country? Didn't they know that there was a problem with a pandemic that was spreading very fast? I mean, when you look at developed countries, when we had Ebola in Africa, flights were closed off completely from Africa. Our leaders didn't know that there was a pandemic that was slowly eating through populations of other countries. Couldn't they think beyond their money, their exports, their incomes? Because the reasons that were given were economic, and they left our borders open, exposing nations that were vulnerable, knowing full well we did not have the capacity, whether it was human resource or infrastructure, to manage the oncoming danger. So we saw danger and we decided, okay, let's leave the doors open.
But we closed borders.
Too late.
Uganda as well closed.
Too late. It could have been done earlier.
Wasn't it well planned?
No, it wasn't.
Didn't we close the airport, the borders, the day we...
It was
the day
too
it was
late.
announced.
No. You
case.
don't wait for the thief to enter your house, then you say, oh, please close the gate. When you know that thieves are in the area, you beef up your security. So America and Europe doesn't wait for things like Ebola and any diseases that are coming out of Africa because they're very deadly diseases and their lives are delicate. They value their people, which we didn't value. I've always said this, and it's very painful, that this was an opportunity for African countries to grow. Because if you close the borders and you cannot import certain things, the manufacturing industry will definitely grow. Most innovations have come out of necessity, need. So machinery comes into play because it's difficult to do a job manually. So you find an innovative way to do it. If we had closed the borders much earlier, thinking about the health of our country, a lot of things couldn't have come to this far. It is so bad that the general population thinks that the government has used this COVID pandemic to prevent proper election year from happening. So as the platform is tilted towards the incumbent, as you said should be, right? How then can...
Not should be.
That's what you said.
As is
you said
the reality in most...
Okay, is the reality. So she mentions, Honorable mentions that we are spectators. So we think we're better players because we are outside. But please remember that there is a barricade between the bench and the playing field.
Literally, you have not been selected on the team. So you have to be the best spectator.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
You don't have to be a spectator if you have the skills to play in the game. Leave the doors open. If you think that, as you said, we were talking about democracies and all. When we think that Uganda is a democracy, if it is true that Uganda is a democracy, which I'm hoping it is, then the barricade should be removed.
Despite the challenges, I think it is. There are certain indicators that to show that it is a democracy.
In preparation for change and development, what happens? Goalposts are changed. This game that is being played, hardly has rules. Goalposts are changed. Age limit is removed. Term limits are removed. One moment it's a movement.
Are they removed removed through a certain structure called the Constitution?
You see,
following the procedures?
Talking about,
are they removed by MPs who are the ones mandated by the Constitution?
We have seen
are those
all
not
this.
rules?
We have seen all this. We have structures in place that if you're outside the country, you will appreciate the structures. But if you're within the country and you know how well manipulated these structures are, then you will know that this is just a facade. It's just cosmetics to say our parliamentarians are sitting down and then they're given gifts or incentives to continue tilting the platform. So now while we're tilting the platform, we're not allowed to enter the game to play. This is an opportunity for this current government.
You have been allowed now to enter the game. When you prepared and decided to enter the game, there were laws and rules. The rules that were provided. On Monday, you satisfied some. You were told, no, wait a minute. Or by Tuesday yesterday, you came back and you satisfied it. General Muntu satisfied it on the first day. My brother, Poa, engineer, satisfied it on the second day without a problem.
I understand all that.
And those are the rules.
But the
I
game is at
understand all
half-time.
that.
The game is at
You see, there are a lot of, as I'm talking about,
at half-time.
as I am talking about the tilting of this platform so that the incumbent can continue to enjoy, I don't know whether it's running this government up or down, whichever way you would perceive it. We now have very difficult circumstances in which we have to do this campaign. First, the days are fewer. Secondly, we have very few, we are allowed only 70 people
to meet
at a time. We have 146 districts. So if a meeting, we're just 5 people here. This meeting has taken 2 hours. Right? Or is going to take 2 hours.
Yeah.
So now move to the next district. Distance, time, exhaustion. These are human beings we're dealing with. And we are running against an incumbent who has air transport. So he can fly from one place to another. We're going to move by road on very bad roads under very interesting circumstances. We have curfew. Our teams have curfew. So I'm still talking about how tilted the platform is. So there is curfew. The good thing is now we have security, so perhaps we will be allowed certain, the Electoral Commission said they would allow us to move past certain hours so that we can prepare for the next day, but we will not be allowed to carry out these meetings. So if 70 people meetings are going to take 2 to 3 hours, then we have to go to radios and TV stations. We have 24 hours, and human beings are supposed to at least have 8 hours of rest in order not to destroy your brain in the process. So what is happening? Couldn't this be adjusted? Is this set in stone? So, as I've always said, the earth has always had survival for the fittest. And where the platforms are tilted, this is the circumstance we are in. So somehow we have to work within the limits the government has given us. We are going to obey the laws of the land, and that is okay. However, we pray that as we plan to move to 2 to maybe 4 districts per day, people will not be breaking down.
Okay.
Because it doesn't make sense, because as you campaign, you have to talk. There are certain things you cannot delegate as a candidate. You can't delegate talking to your people. You can't delegate FaceTime with the people that you're supposed to meet. So you have to show up. So you're going to talk from 7 a.m. Please remember, over 70% of Uganda's population are involved in agriculture. So people are in the gardens. They are in the gardens from maybe 6 a.m. to midday.
Okay.
So we have those few hours within which to work. So whatever happens, we will try and utilize the time and space given to us before curfew.
I hear you. I hear you. Honorable Amriat, I know you had some responses you wanted to make, especially to some of the issues raised by your colleague, Honorable Muhanga, but also on the question of, I needed to hear you also on the question of how you're going to conduct your election and covering the breadth of the nation and still run your campaign effectively.
Yeah, my sister Margaret out there in Kabarole is a regime apologist. And I'm not surprised about what she has said in defense of the regime. But one thing that I would like to remind her is that the NRM has been in power for 35 years now.
34.
Coming to 35. In just a few months, we'll be counting 35. And this is as long as the period that Finland has moved from a timber and paper economy to a high-tech economy. About 35 years ago, Finland was a very poor country that took deliberate measures to ensure that they move from the state of economy that they were in to a high-tech economy. In fact, the Nokia Development Center is found in Helsinki. I was privileged to visit it. I know the education we've talked about contributed a lot, immensely, to Finland getting out of poverty to one of the super economies of this country, where a politician is paid least and a teacher is paid highest. Now, when you listen to Honorable Margaret Muhanga talking about, what the progress they have made.
General is clapping for
I feel lost. I feel extremely disappointed that we have today dishonest Ugandans who will want to paint a glossy picture of what is happening today using figures and not facts. With due respect to Prof here, you have talked about, health improvement. The statistics show, yes. In paper, that is actually true. But who contributes towards this good health?
Taxpayers.
It's the taxpayer. Yeah. You find that you cannot get a service in a public health facility. You have no choice but to go to the private facility, where you have to pay, sell a cow, sell a bicycle, sell a piece of land, to contribute to that very, very nice statistics. And we still think that we have a government that we can be proud about. I don't think. Today in this country, people are still dying of jiggers. Jiggers, mpunza.
Mpunza.
Yes.
Not impunza.
Well, whatever you want it, a pusa. I could call it in my local language, it's called a pusa. So the midway between Luganda and the Ate, so is what I have said. So, and dying of hunger. There are people who die of hunger in this country.
Yeah.
And we still think there is a government that cannot feed its own population, that cannot stimulate the population to be able to produce. We still deal with hand-hose, primitive, practices of agriculture. And, I support what my brother, General Muntu, said about the investment in agriculture. All these declarations, you go and sign up, some declaration in Maputo and the other places. And you come back home and never implement those declarations. Now, going back to the question that you have asked Charles, Mr. Museveni has been deliberate about pushing this election down the throat of Ugandans. And he has done this systematically. You know, during the COVID period, he was on television every day. And my colleagues have alluded to that. And everybody would run to attend to, you know, the television, thinking that the lockdown would be eased in the next day, because people were dying in their homes. Dying of food shortage, only to see Mr. Museveni delivering very boring speeches. See, something that wouldn't really help the nation sufficiently. I'm sorry I have to say this.
But didn't he have to, as a leader, didn't he have to guide? We saw many leaders in different countries. The Prime Minister of the UK, President Obama, used to do it.
Don't mind that he was advising the experts instead of the vice versa happening. That's what happened in these presidential addresses.
But
now,
just a minute. But don't you think that because as a journalist I could follow, and I know that there are meetings of the scientists who are the experts, and then there is the presidential, and of course you know that the minister would come here and give her own update from here to the nation, which was okay, and the politician who is the president also has to do his part. If you can't do that, then why do you lead?
If you watched President Trump addressing matters of COVID,
he had his own challenges.
There was this fellow here, really, who was the front in all this.
Dr. Fauci.
Yes.
And Dr. Bax.
They were the ones who carried the show.
No, he would invite them.
Because they were
the presidential press conferences or address to the nation, and then he would welcome them to give the technical view.
Mr. Museveni spoke as if he was the expert himself, advising the experts. Now,
the expert there.
I think that he was politicking. He was politicking.
But what would you do?
His campaign began many years ago.
What would you do, Engineer?
It reached the peak during this COVID period. Now,
your campaign,
as FDC, we called on government to declare a state of emergency in this country. And there are provisions within the Constitution for this to happen. And spelled out very clearly what would happen. People would retain their positions. The state of emergency would be declared.
Article 110.
Yes, precisely. If we really knew this was a dangerous disease, as it really seems to be, we take COVID seriously as FDC. What was the priority? To have an election against maintaining the health of Ugandans? What was the problem with extending this election? Now, okay, we are in the center of this. Being told to run around for 63 days, my friends have enumerated the hardships that we are likely to experience during the time when we go out. The time is very short. Now, just look at this 14th day, magical date. I know you've counted 63 days, but the campaigns actually end on the 12th.
Yeah,
officially.
That I counted up to the 12th.
Okay,
we counted together with
that's right. That's right. Okay, that's good enough.
Yeah.
Last elections, general elections, presidential elections, and parliamentary elections,
2016,
were on the 18th. The period was within the provisions of the law. What informs the Electoral Commission in reducing this time by 1 month? Yet, there's a bit of flexibility. I think this is what I am going to ask the chairman of the Electoral Commission.
You have a meeting with him tomorrow.
They did not exercise, that breathing room. They didn't take advantage of it to help the candidates.
But haven't you passed the time because of
what
complaining?
Time? What does the Constitution say?
Like General said, the time for complaining or for registering that concern should have been earlier, because you are not, I think you cannot pass.
I think the General was very, very clear about this. Yes, he did.
He did.
But in any case, excuse me, Charles, The announcement was made just this evening. When would we have complained? We never knew the time. Nominations was concluded yesterday. And the announcement made today. There's really some funny obscurity that should not happen in any electoral process.
During the meeting before the nominations, we asked them when the election day was, and they said they'll work it out. So the day after, it makes it seem like they did not know, and they just decided today when the election day would be.
That was the day he referred to the law and said that that the law mandates him or the Electoral Commission to announce after the end of the nominations, right? Was that the time?
Yes.
So whatever the case, we have got 146 districts to traverse in 63 days. It's going to be a tall order. See, when electoral processes are not handled with the sensitivities that they need to be handled, that can be a recipe for a troubled country. It can.
Do you think that if you had united, and maybe General can also come in, as opposition parties, if you had united, it would have been easier for you to handle? Doesn't this bring back that question rife to discuss? That if, just imagine if FDC was united with DP, with ANT, with which other one, NUP, that you would say perhaps now that we have this challenge, let FDC take this side of West, let NUP take North, DP take
Charles,
do you think that would have
electric politics is more complicated than you know what you seem to understand?
Me, I'm just theorizing.
Really, it's not just a straight line.
Me, I'm just theorizing.
Graph and you know you have a straight graph. No.
General, what do you think? Do you think that would have helped, in your view?
It's a totally different question. Because we are looking at the fairness of the system.
Okay.
You know, if you don't play fair, you create conditions for dissatisfaction and discontent. Fairness and even-handedness is something that any regime should put in place if you want to build a society that is at peace with itself. But if you think that because you have got control over the state security apparatus and you have got money to manipulate systems, and therefore you can impose your will on people, you cause a deep sense of dissatisfaction and discontent. And it's really very unfortunate. Because even when you have made certain progress, in these countries which are still fragile, you don't want to push a situation because you can never know when you can tip over. So pray to God that you don't tip over. But suppose you tip over. We have seen the cost of putting countries together from the pieces when they fall apart. But anyway, I don't think we will add value because in this type of conversation, because we cannot stretch beyond 63 days. So we have to operate within the 63 days.
True.
It's unfair, but it basically shows you the mindset behind those who are in the regime. It also shows you the mindset of those who are managing the electoral process. But we have to operate within the given circumstances, do the best we can, and we will be banking on the Ugandan people themselves to understand all this. And therefore to know that it is really much more on what they themselves do to choose and say, enough is enough. There's no way we can be manipulated by a system using our own money. Because what do you think that they are using this regime? You think those ministers and Jerome Seven go to their farms and sell cows, that's the money they are going to put in these electoral processes? They are using our own money. Now, if there is a population which recognizes that, you know what, something needs to happen, 60 days are enough.
Okay.
Yes, to communicate through the different channels that there are, and for there to be a shift. Because most of the things that have been happening are not new to people out there.
Okay.
So some of us are banking on the understanding of the population, but more so to those who are enlightened, who know the dangers that we are in, who understand that this situation needs to change. So at the end of the day, it is not just us, the individuals who are running all over the country, that agents of change themselves, because there are many in this country, people who are tired. You cannot go and put your bid in any process here to get a contract or your bid to go through without paying through your nose. You cannot make investments in this country without those who are in the government, not many, muscle in and literally force themselves into your business. Many people are in that. So teachers who are there, who are dispossessed. You know, when Honorable Oboy talked about Finland, where teachers earn more than politicians. That's the country where there is discipline, who understand where to put their priorities. Here, many people are muscling into politics because they cannot survive elsewhere. So people who are being pushed out of the areas ordinarily where they have feel satisfied to operate in, those who are in business, now they are failing, they are coming into politics, are the ones who will be saying this needs to change, and therefore become agents of the different candidates. Because if they look and say, you know, I think Nancy is the one who can become a good president, they need to go out and campaign. If they think it is Honorable Patrick Oboy, they need to do that. If they think it is Muntu, for them to take up that role so that we terminate this regime. The country has been pushed to the edge, and we should not let it be tipped over. So people should not be looking at us, the 11, they themselves, the majority of the Ugandan people who know that things are wrong, must work day and night so that those whom you believe in, even when they don't reach where you are, do the work yourselves. This situation we are in is simply unacceptable.
Yes, Honorable. Wind up so that I bring in Mr. Gobi.
A few things about this. We in the FDC have never invested all our hopes in an election organized under the leadership of Mr. Museveni.
But you continue, you have always participated.
Let me develop my point. You see, we have called for electoral reforms that have never seen the light of day. Today, the Electoral Commission largely remains an authority that is appointed by Mr. Museveni. They are there through the wish of a candidate who is running against us and the others who are not in the studio. So, this battle is not about just the 63 days. It is a fight for the liberation of this country, where Nancy, you know, can speak from Kisoro and be heard in Kotido, because the people of Uganda understand what they want. And for us, we have not been blind to this fact of a manipulated election, something that is almost already put before us, waiting to be announced. And this is why we continue to mobilize the population. We've continued to engage the population. We're not that naive to know that this COVID here replaced POMA that has been tormenting us all the time. And so we went on two fronts in this particular election. The electoral front that, you know, I can now confidently say in the FDC I lead, and the struggle front that has been called Plan B, led by Dr. Kiza Besigye, to drum up the population to bring change to this country. So we are not going to give up on our country. We know that 1% of this population has used 9% to manipulate the majority 90%. And this is totally unacceptable.
Okay.
And so we are going to be calling on the masses, those 90%, whom NRM has put its knee on their neck, and they cannot breathe to rise up to the occasion. The teacher who is paid peanuts, the farmer who can't get returns from his or her sweat, this young person who cannot get a job even after going through all the stages of education, those poor people who are dying of poverty, and the list is endless.
Okay.
We are going to be speaking to their minds whenever we get the opportunity. We will speak to their hearts.
Like you got
like
now.
We are doing now.
Good.
And we'll continue doing this through our network of agents across the country.
Okay. Mr. Gobi, and remember, time is now going. So there is also your question, which you must ask you and Margaret. Yes. Candidates, I usually don't inform our guests, but the panelists usually have their time also to ask you questions.
Oh, okay.
So usually the panelists are Margaret, Gobi, and Honorable Katuntu. But as it turns out, Honorable Katuntu has joined you on the campaign in Bugweri.
Again?
In Bugweri as an independent. So now I'm left with, he's now a renegade. I'm left with now only Mr. Gobi and Honorable Muhanga.
It turned on his word.
No, he told me he was not going to campaign this time here when we had just started the show. Then he said, he's now going back. The people have called him back.
Well, typical of Ugandan politicians, isn't it?
It is good to be called back by the people. So, Mr. Gobi, make your comment, probably in 1 or 2 minutes, and then ask your questions, and then I go to, and then the candidates can respond to.
My comment will be short, because I'm not a candidate. Be constrained by the 60 days. But in Uganda we have what political science call a process democracy. Some periodic elections that take place, and we elect leaders, but we have failed to build a principled democracy. And as I told you, the principled one comes,
with a certain level of economic stability.
Yes, preconditions, prerequisites.
And the growth.
I therefore think that these advantages, by the way, are relative. The incumbent has a very big advantage over the rest of the candidates, the other 10. But even amongst them also, they have certain levels of advantage.
Over each other.
Over each other. For example, now there are 3 who have spoken to the nation on the national broadcaster. The others are not here. That's an advantage. And amongst them also, there are those who have spoken more than others. That's also an advantage. There are those who are near you in the sitting arrangement. That's also an advantage. So, when we are analyzing these advantages, we need to be also cognizant of the fact that in a democracy which is still growing, there are certain factors which are very difficult to change. And that's why some of us think the only opportunity a country can have in order to kind of level the ground a bit is by having leaders coming for a certain period, they leave, then others come in, and so on and so forth. But that one, we no longer have it in Uganda. I now come to my question. Given that...
who are you starting with?
I'm going to ask one question, and
they all respond.
I think each of them can answer, because it's a bit an inclusive question.
Okay.
Given now that the incumbent has massive advantage, you have 60 days to challenge him, and already, like Kepoa is saying, rightly so, he doesn't see a chance of defeating this incumbent, given the circumstances in which he's operating. My question is, with all of these factors and facts, Why do you participate in an experiment whose results you already have?
Can I answer first?
Who wants to go first? Who wants to go first?
I can go.
General Poa? This time let's start with the Poa.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 minute each.
The outcome of this election
may not be an end in itself. And I want to use a classical example within the continent. It's something that most political players would know. Even common people in the villages actually would know. The case of Egypt. The late Hosni Mubarak, who took over power from Anwar Sadat. You know, when Anwar Sadat was assassinated during a parade many years ago, his de facto #2 took over, and this brought in the military strongman Hosni Mubarak power. An election was conducted completely under the control of Hosni Mubarak. And you know, I imagine General Muntu in that election, Nancy here, the others, Tumukunde, and you know, the population saying, the regime apologists and those in power saying, you have no chance. You are just wasting time. You don't have the army, you don't have the money, you don't have the electoral body, you don't have the population. And so what percentage did he score? Over 90%. But after that win, so-called win, I want to put a question to you, Prof. Did Mubarak last?
You want me to
Don't even tell me about, I can admit, well, there was chaos thereafter. Because the change of regime by the Muslim Brotherhood was not, properly done, controlled, to secure the victory of the Muslim Brotherhood and for them to run the country successfully. All I am saying is that every election under the NRM, we in the FDC have used it as an opportunity. First of all, we believed that maybe, the ballot could bring change. But when we noticed the manipulation by the regime, we realized that, this man was determined to stay forever. And he's still determined.
Okay.
And this is why the laws kept changing. Term limits were removed. I was in the House at the time when term limits were removed. Then very recently, in 2017, age limit removed forcefully using the military. All sorts of funny things have happened in our country.
Okay.
And so for us, we always go to an election to utilize that small window to continue mobilizing against the dictatorship in our country. That is why we are in this election.
Okay, Nancy, you follow. Given you know the answer.
Maybe for Nancy, you can add on a small, because this one has a bit answered. What's your individual objective in standing, given that, as you have already elaborated, you don't have a chance to win?
I didn't say that. I didn't say I didn't have a chance to win. I wouldn't be in this election if I did not see a win. My background is in sports, and I got accustomed to winning. Okay. Because I train and prepare for months before that 100-meter dash or that swimming competition. And by the time you get into the competitions at whatever level it is, you have a rough idea of what it could turn out to be. You said that why are we participating in an experiment whose answer we already know? By we, who do you mean? Because I'm not part of the we that you think know the answer. I'm an optimist, and I believe I can tell when something is skewed towards a win or a loss. By the time someone who's supposed to be stronger starts to tilt the platform or change goalposts, it means nobody knows the outcome of this election. If the outcome of this election was known, certain goalposts would not be shifting. Even the government knows that it is sunset. And whether you like it or not, that sun is going to go down. And a new dawn will come. This election is very unpredictable because it is bringing new characters on the scene. It's bringing new opportunities on the scene. We've had election after election being manipulated, and maybe people were quiet. This time, people are hungry for change. And Ugandans have shown that they can take any change that will come. It is up to us, the candidates, to present the change that Ugandans need. For this election, it doesn't matter how powerful the incumbent is. If it were so, then the people in government wouldn't be threatening people and saying they have the army. They wouldn't. They wouldn't be threatening people and telling them they have the money and therefore whoever doesn't have money should not be in this campaign. You see, when you're clearly the winner in a competition, I used to stand on the starting blocks at 100 meters. Then you look around and see, okay, I know that one, I've run against that one before, and I know this one, and I know my strength. So when I start off, I have to prepare my start to be powerful enough so that I can win or at least get a good chance at this. But you see, the person who's racing among the sprinters, who is not sure
you were on the same line in that
of his place.
But this time, one runner is already...
It doesn't matter. You see, when it is time for change, it doesn't matter how powerful someone thinks they are. We've seen Gaddafi was one of the most powerful leaders in Africa. What happened was very unexpected. I'm one of the people who believes that we shouldn't see bloodshed. We should pay any price right now to ensure that Uganda doesn't see any bloodshed, because it is not necessary and it is too costly right now, especially for us the women, because we are the ones who are pregnant during wars. We are the ones who are carrying babies on our backs during wars. So bloodshed is not an option. You asked me what is my personal what?
Objective.
Personal objective. I have said this before and I'll say it again. I am the embodiment of the change that Uganda needs right now. Why? We've had military leaders before. We've had men before. We see our nation is like a drama stage. One leader comes in and says one thing and does another. And in this case, we have had a different leader by the same name every election. And basically no change at all. Other leaders have failed before to get into office. I'm not here to fail. I'm not here to play games. When women rise up, it means something has failed. We are created to be helpmates. So when it starts, because I'll talk about families. In families are the building block of societies. In a family, a woman will naturally stand back and wait
for her husband to do what he needs to do, because that is his primary role. She only steps up when he has totally failed. Our country is having difficulty visualizing a female president because we have been conditioned that leadership is for the men. They've not had female contenders that are serious enough to say, look here, I'm stepping up. I'm not looking for a job because I had a good job before I came here. In my case, I sacrificed a very good job so that I could run in this campaign because I need to serve. Something is wrong. I'm sorry because my colleagues here are men. But it seems the men have failed our nation. We are deteriorating day after day. And maybe it is time for the women to step up. We've seen organizations that were failing totally. When women stepped up to the platform, they did a better job than their male counterparts. Maybe Uganda is at that stage where a female leader is required in order to bring real change. I'm not here talking about Museveni Agende. I'm not here talking about government needs to change very urgently and all. No, no, no. I'm talking about our nation coming from where it is to where it ought to be. We are so blessed. When you look at the countries that were in our state at the same time in the 80s and where they are right now, what is the difference? When you look at this most recent challenge that the world has had, COVID, the countries with female leaders performed better than generally most countries. When women are leaders, they're not seeking...
We also have women
Uganda
leading the COVID fight.
Yes, but who is at the helm of power? When
the women are the ones handling COVID, they are the ones advising the managers.
Why do you think so?
Because they are in charge.
Because right now, it's been clearly shown.
The leadership of COVID is housed at the Ministry of Health.
Wait for me before you interrupt. When women get into leadership, we're not seeking recognition or building personal legacies or massaging our egos. When women through history start to come up in positions of leadership, it means something is broken and women are here to help and fix it. When you look at the women warriors in the past, when they came in, it's because they were needed. Right now, Uganda is discussing whether it's ready for a female president. Do you know why? Because I guess there's a gaping hole that requires a different kind of leadership. Not a leadership of manipulation and threats and fear. When mothers are raising children, we teach children how to do housework, how to take care of themselves, not through threats, but through making them actually love what it is that they are doing. Uganda right now needs to learn how to take care of itself in the economy, in the different sectors in our country, because they love the country. But right now, Ugandans don't even have an identity. And we need Ugandans to remember who they are. I am here to step into this place. I don't think this is an experiment. It is a process through which we have to go to change leadership for the better. And we do not know the results. I believe we're going to be very shocked and surprised of this election, regardless of the control of the security forces and the money bags.
Okay, General, your time to respond to that question.
Well, General Museveni may have the advantages of incumbency, but he also must know that he's carrying a lot of baggage. From a strategic standpoint, he's at the weakest ever. He may have some tactical advantages. From a strategic standpoint, we advantage those who are vying for change. A number of challenges, though, to be overcome. The mindsets of the population, because they're the ones who have to make the choices. And I think that's where, if we are not to win, it would be because of the population not being determined to make the right choices. Because when you listen, when you do analysis, you recognize that the majority of the people want change. However, you also need to recognize that there has been fear in the minds of the population. You keep hearing people saying, yes, so many things have gone wrong. But how does change come about? From our own analysis as Alliance for National Transformation, we believe that the population is looking for a credible alternative political force. And we've been systematically focusing on positioning ourselves to be that. Harold Wilson said, the former Prime Minister of UK, that a week is too long in politics. There is a deep desire for change in this country. But people have been trying to ask themselves, okay, should Museveni and the NRM get out? What happens? They are not certain. We are positioning ourselves to enable Ugandans to know that here is a credible alternative political force. A team of leaders who are disciplined, who are conscious of the challenges that we do have as a country, and who want to offer solutions to that. Because we know that should that message impact to a level where people can say, yes, we can trust these guys, it doesn't take a week for people to shift in their minds once they trust. Okay. You can wake up in a month and you find a total shift in the dynamics of politics in the country, okay, once people make that conclusion. Okay. It is our intention to create that in the minds of the Ugandan people, to make that conclusion, that here is a team of Ugandans who are disciplined, who are conscious of what they need to do. We can trust them. And I can tell you, the moment that happens, Gen 7 will be out of power. So we are in this to win. It's not that we are going in thinking that, you know, this is a very difficult situation. One, some of us, like in my background, myself, I'm from the military background. In the politics, societies fight to put conditions in place for fairness, for transparent systems of democratic practices. That's not like where we come from in the army. In the army, you never expect any fairness. In war, you never have fairness. So when you are going into battle, even if there are very difficult conditions, even if there are odds against you, you go in not expecting that you are going to have a leveled playing field. We're going with that mindset. Even in this situation, we didn't go in expecting that there was going to be free or fairness. No, we are the ones who have to establish that the moment we take power.
Okay, Honorable Muhanga. Honorable Muhanga, technical team. Honorable Margaret. Oh. Unfortunately, my technical people are informing me that Honorable Margaret, my technical people are we have lost her. Okay, I think we need then to close. I wanted to bring Margaret to make one comment and ask her question, but if we have lost her, I think we need to let me give room for, on behalf of, instead of Margaret, let me give the second, Gobi, you want to ask another round? Or we just, I think we need to close.
Yeah.
we need to close. Let me, given this is, we are also meant to back up Electoral Commission and do civic education, and 1 minute each to the candidates, and then Gobi closes for us. Let me start with General Muntu, 1 minute, Nancy 1 minute, and Honorable Obuwepoa to pass a message to the country. Non-violence election, calling for non-violence election. We are coming from next week to the countryside to wind up.
Yeah. We really would like to encourage all the actors, first those who manage the state security apparatus, to be professional in the manner in which they handle all their duties. And for the Electoral Commission to be firm and be bold. The country will be behind you, even when you make the most difficult decisions, but once they are the right decisions. And on our side, we would want to respect the law to ensure that we don't tip this country. We are hanging in a very complicated situation. On the side of the regime, I'm not so sure that we can advise them and they listen. They have failed to listen for 34 years. But if all other actors act in responsible ways, yes, we can manage this exercise and reach its logical conclusion by getting victory on the side of the change agents.
Good.
I'd like to thank you and God bless you.
Thank you so much, General. Nancy.
My fellow Ugandans, once again we have an opportunity to exercise our constitutional rights, to select leaders and change governments, if we must, in a beautiful environment without bloodshed. I request each and every one of us as Ugandans to be wary of people who are speaking of bloodshed, because at the end of the day, it's not their families that suffer. Let us go into this free and fair. At this time, we shouldn't be afraid of anyone, whether they have military power. According to the Constitution, the military is supposed to be at the service of every Ugandan, not just one. So please cast your vote without fear. It's a private vote, so no one is going to see what you're casting.
Okay.
Do not be intimidated. Let's get into this election and let's choose right. May God bless you for God and our country.
Honorable Poa.
Fellow countrymen and women, we are yet going to go into another election. Treasure your votes, because it's through that vote that you will contribute towards building a new Uganda. Don't sell that vote, because that piece of paper is priceless. Don't accept inducement, sugar, salt, piece of sabunyu, money, to take over control over your votes. Do not accept intimidation. This is your country. As a citizen of this country, you are protected under the Constitution.
Okay.
I also want to add that turn up to cast your vote. Protect your vote and protect our victory.
Okay.
Thank you very much, fellow citizens. God bless you, and God bless our country. One Uganda, one people.
Thank you. Now, what are you going to say?
I also say thank you very much to Ugandans. You know, since 1946, when the World War II ended, 47 democracies have failed in the world. I wouldn't want to see Uganda, and among those 47, Uganda was among them. I wouldn't want it to become the 48th That is failing twice as a democracy. But also we need to be mindful that we are going to conduct this election at a time when the world is facing the pandemic of COVID-19. That's why I'm speaking to you with a mask. Please keep those masks on, keep healthy. Let these politicians not get you so excited to die before you even see the new president, if you are voting for one, or for whoever you are retaining in power. So that all of the power is in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Gobi. Thanks to the guests, the General Muntu, Nancy Kalembe, Honorable Amuriat Patrick. Thanks so much to Honorable Margaret. Unfortunately, we lost you because of battery issues, but thanks so much for always participating. And again, sympathies to your family. From the entire team here at UBC, especially the Behind the Headlines team, thank you so much and for staying this long. Thanks to the producers and the camera persons, the technical people behind the show. You know, we are going into an election and a campaign which is beginning. Out to you there, please ensure that you stay safe. COVID is real. You have had the reports of the you know, Ugandans that we are losing. Many people have died already. We have lost many citizens. We don't need to lose people if we can avoid it. So take care. Ensure that you participate in your civic duties. Listen to the candidates. If you can listen to them through radio or online, please do that. It's a better, a safer option. Don't go out there and risk your life. Your life is precious to your family, to the country. Thank you so much. God bless you all. God bless Uganda. Bye-bye. Until next week, stay safe.
Fundamental Media wishes all Ugandans a happy 58th Independence Anniversary. We deal in print media,